Invincible has taken the world by storm, not only because of how it subverts superhero tropes, but also because of the way it dares to change the roles supporting characters play. And it's these role reversals that have given us a beautifully fleshed out depiction of the human experience in this series. So today I want to talk about the number one character, the MVP, the one person who made our Invincible universe so unique. People love to yap in the comments about whether this universe features a distinctively good Mark or a distinctively good Nolan. Thanks to exposition revealed by Angstrom and the dialogue of some Invincible variants this season, we can safely acknowledge that there have been variants of Mark that have killed their father and variants of Nolan that have either killed, imprisoned, or assimilated their son. So truly, this is the only universe where both of them are in line. They come correct. And who makes them come correct? It's none other than my girl, Miss Debbie, okay? She is the reason. She made
a mere moment on Earth turn you into a weak, sentimental traitor.
Because while it's true that Mark receiving his powers late gave her ample time to raise her son, it's also true that she grew into her own morals throughout the years, and she showed Nolan everything she knew about one simple thing: being human. So what exactly did Nolan and Debbie's relationship look like on the day-to-day? If you take a closer look at season 1, not only is their closeness well established, their intimacy is very intentional, and they bring each other into the present moment in every interaction. First, they are extremely affectionate with each other. They are public, playful, and just plain unashamed of showing just how attracted they are to each other. Mark actually complains about this from episode 1, and it's a running joke that Nolan and Debbie's sex life is maintained, to say the least. Honestly, I'm surprised they only ended up with one kid. But anyways, this is how we should be thinking about the bedroom. It shouldn't be something that we keep behind closed doors, but rather something that we can acknowledge sneakily and playfully. A real life relationship that easily comes to mind for me is Will Tennyson and his wife Katie. He's a fitness YouTuber that I really enjoy watching, but the way that him and his wife just playfully throw sexual quips at each other and they just can continue that kind of banter, it doesn't ever land the wrong way. It just shows how close they are and how comfortable they are around with each other. That is human. The feeling of physical intimacy bringing two people more connection than just the physical act of it all. I mean, body language as simple as a fleeting touch and, a knowing stare says, I see you, I support you, I'm here with you in this present moment. And that ebb and flow that they kind of have, that wordless communication that exists between them, also really allows them to get on each other's level a lot quicker when things do escalate. Which brings me to focal point number 2. Nolan defers to Debbie in every argument. I'm not saying all men should be at the beck and call of their wife, but I mean, if the shoe fits, alright, I'm playing. But for real, listen to your wife. Human relationships thrive on balancing the give and the take, or the give and the receive. Nolan looks to Debbie as a compass. She reels him in when his Viltrumite instincts threaten to take hold. And he can always tell if he's messed up in any given situation because Debbie's cues, whether they are a kick in the leg or a look or her actually talking to him and not holding back her punches, okay? She is the only one who can talk to Nolan like this.
Fuck you, Nolan.
She can tell him how it is, and he actually accepts that because he values her opinion and respects her and seeks validation from her. That is how I think most people should feel in regards to their partner. Not like keeping them on a pedestal, but making sure that their emotions and their opinions are held into the same regard that you regard your own.
I had to teach him so much about Earth. It made us more equal.
Nolan was probably very focused on his mission of conquering Earth slowly and checking human compatibility with Viltrumite blood at the beginning. Perhaps at first, he deferred to Debbie just enough to get close, to have a child with her. But I do believe that over time, he began to truly see Debbie as a force of nature, and it's honestly why he has trouble doing anything to her. Think about this. Even when he called her a pet, he didn't say it to her face. And not for a single second do I believe he actually would have said that if she was in the room with them. Like, you know that meme of the immortal where he talks crap about Mark, but he would never say that shit to his face because he knows he would get beat up and he's scared of him? That's exactly how Nolan feels about Debbie. In fact, I'm sure that if given the chance, he would have approached his wife and his son with a huge extra large pizza and a bowl of fresh cut fruit, and he would have been like, so about the Viltrum Empire. You know how I know this? Because he is the most textbook, stereotypical immigrant dad I've ever seen. He uses food as a way to connect to his loved ones in times of stress. You know how sometimes immigrant parents will sometimes get mad at you, yell at you, beat you up, make you feel like dog shit and like you should have never been born? Just me? Well, anyways, after hours of mentally cursing them out and having your tears dried up on your cheeks and all over your pillowcase, you suddenly hear a tiptoe to your door, and a small voice says, "Hey, I cut you a mango." And suddenly, the next couple meals in the household are bomb as hell. They say that love is the secret ingredient to a good meal, and if that's the case, then can I just add that shame is the equivalent of MSG, okay? MSG makes everything better. Shame makes the meal 100 times better. They have something to prove with that meal. But for real, if we take a look at the next couple scenes, you'll see how in moments of distress, Nolan automatically looks to food to connect back with Debbie, with Mark, even with his friends.
Come on, let's go home. I'm dying for some real food. I'm feeling pizza. I can be to Naples and back before the cheese stops bubbling.
In the first clip, Mark has just experienced a failure to save a life for the first time. And for Nolan, this is just part of the job. Also, humans are dumb and weak. But he senses the weird, sad energy coming from his son, and he doesn't want him to feel that way. I think it was more than just toughening him up. I mean, Nolan had just recovered from killing his trusted colleagues. And in that moment, I think he genuinely just wanted to regain a sense of normalcy with his family, even if the situation is anything but. Later, he pulls the same move after the Guardian's funeral because he wants to keep his family close, keep them together, keep him on his side. So he suggests picking up food himself. He can be to Naples and back. But Debbie's like, we just came back from a funeral, bro. This is not the moment, this is not the place, this is not the time. Read the room. And in that moment, she rejects his grasp for a connection. But other times, his efforts really land on her. Like the time that he offered up kaiju meat for dinner. I genuinely love that moment. It shows us that some points of their relationship truly were just about living. If there wasn't all this other stuff going on, maybe this is what it would have been like. He would have just had fun living life. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end.
You've been mean. You're hiding something from me, and it hurts.
By episode 4, Debbie has begun to have very high suspicions of Nolan about the potential role that he's played in the murder of the Guardians of the Globe, and also where she stands in the relationship with him. She's feeling very hurt because she can tell that he's hiding something. And can I just say to anyone who's been in a long-term relationship, if you think that your partner cannot notice a situation like this, you are dead wrong. And I speak to both sides, whether you are someone who did something wrong and held something back, or if you're someone who senses something wrong, senses something is hidden, both of you should speak up about it. Just speak up about it. Because if you don't, eventually it's gonna boil over anyway, and you're gonna have to talk about it. That's what happens in this scene. Yet, what I love about it is that Nolan is surprisingly vulnerable with Debbie.
I never thought I would have a family. And then you came along. I'm terrified I could lose everything.
Nolan was a simple man before spending time with Debbie. He had been assigned a task of making a child, but never in his right mind did he think he was gonna raise that child. Not the way humans do, and certainly not with a batty-ass human wife by his side. If he would have raised his child the Viltrumite way, without parental love and an extreme focus on militarization, we would have had a completely different Mark. So he is being very honest and open about his feelings. And at the end of this conversation, how do these two people come back to each other? How do they reconnect? He offers to take her back to the place where they had their first date in Rome. This is a very human action of not only giving an apology, but trying to show it as well. And in a very human-like way, he's saying, I'm trying to be as vulnerable as I can be with you, so I need you to meet me in the middle and let me do this one thing for you. It's very sweet of him. Unfortunately, just as our degenerate, weak, human demons inside take control over us, Nolan's insecurities get the better of him, and he starts to question her loyalty over the meal. He asks her if she really trusts him. He says,
Do you trust me, Debbie?
There's a dragon behind you!
Please, do you trust me?
and what he's asking between the lines is, if it were me, would you still stand by my side? Would you still love me if I was a
Worm.
Even when a civilian threat arises moments later, instead of being a superhero, he asks her again and again and again until she finally says,
I trust you.
and his response to that is,
You have no idea how much I needed to hear you say that.
that is the sign of somebody who's really looking for validation from this person. You don't look for that kind of validation from your pet. Seeking validation is a distinctly human act, for only we are burdened by the thought that our loved ones might not love us the same way that we love them. Clearly, this conversation takes a bit of a toxic turn, and I would not condone the actions here, but it does still go a long way to show how he's trying to connect with her, he's trying to be vulnerable with her, he's trying to still maintain this ongoing rapport with Debbie, even though he knows that it could possibly fall apart soon. Debbie is also, at this time, starting to feel very conflicted because she's being faced with sides of Nolan that perhaps she's never seen before. This is very normal in long-term relationships. You are going to see sides of your partner that you've never seen before, even after years of being together, because people change over time, they evolve. And now Nolan's been presented with the situation that brings him back to the mission, and she is dealing with all of this without really understanding what's at stake or what's at work here. We're at this family dinner in episode 5, and Debbie is barely touching her food. She's not eating. She is not connected with Nolan in this moment, even though just one episode ago, she had been very connected with Nolan. She had made up with him. They had been physically intimate again. But now she's back to doubting. She's back to sensing that something is wrong. And she knows, so she tells him.
You didn't know anything about humans or our society or what was important to us.
And?
I taught you all that. I showed you how to be a hero here.
This is all going so quickly. I didn't think it'd be this difficult.
By this point in time, Debbie and Nolan's relationship is no longer on a solid foundation. Nolan is sensing that it is slipping through his fingers, and he's surprised at how difficult the processing of it is. He thought it would be much easier for him to go through with his mission, but he's finding himself going through it instead. And it reminds me of a scene much later in Invincible where Art is consoling Debbie after Nolan's been away and she's been alone, dealing with his absence, dealing with his betrayal. And he tells her,
Hell, you're the real reason we're all still alive and not slaves. Or worse.
think about how true that is for a moment. Because Mark didn't get his powers for 17 years in this universe, it's not just the fact that Debbie got 17 years to raise Mark, it's that she got 17 years to raise Nolan as well, not as a mother, but as a human, teaching him how to be human. If she had not been able to be with Nolan for all that time, things would not have turned out this way. She might have even been convinced to join the Viltrumite Empire, because we know that's a possibility. Angstrom mentions that in some universes, Debbie joins Mark and Nolan, and that might be a direct result of things happening much quicker, and Nolan kind of not caring about manipulating Debbie into being with him and standing by his side. But because they've spent 20 years together, 20 years as equals, because that's what they are equals. Yes, Nolan is a superhuman, he's a Viltrumite, but Debbie is on his level, if not higher. She taught him how to freaking live. And they've had 20 years of history together. 20 years could be a moment, and 20 years could be a freaking lifetime. So yeah, in the span of a Viltrumite life, it's not much. But time is really relative. And the moment that you spend with a significant other, we know how it is. If you're in your mid-20s, if you've been through a breakup, it could have been a situationship that lasted 2 weeks, and it could have been a long-term relationship that lasted 3 years. You could be devastated both times. So just imagine 20 years. That really, really made a difference. It made so much of a difference that Nolan does have connections to humans that are not Debbie. We see this in how he handles his relationship with Art. Technically, when he visits Art and offers to drink with him, we as viewers understand that he's doing this to make sure that Art won't talk. There's a bit of a threat veiled in his words. But if you also take the time to really listen to him talk, he's being as vulnerable as he can get with Art as well.
It's funny how quickly things can fall apart. One day it seems like you have all the time in the world, and then the next, it's gone.
It's not just a threat to Art. The threat that he's speaking of is the threat that he's feeling in his own life, that at a moment's notice, he could lose it all. So he is being genuine, even though he is also very much trying to do damage control in this moment. And something really ironic that I want to add is after this scene with Nolan and Art, they skip to Mark and what's going on in his life. But by the time they go back to Nolan, who has just returned from his meeting with Art and is about to enter the house where he knows Debbie is inevitably waiting to confront him, the song goes, "But I fucked up," signaling that Nolan knows he is in the wrong here. In that moment, Nolan knows that his relationship is at a breaking point, and what happens next is going to determine his future. In episode 1, when Mark first reveals to his parents that, "Hey, I got my powers, isn't this awesome?" Nolan just has this soulless, blank look on his face before going,
Are you sure?
Pretty sure. Threw a trash bag
Are you sure?
into space.
Are you sure?
he cannot mentally process that this is now how it's going to have to go down. In this moment, well, the two sides of him, the two wolves inside him are at war, because the warrior in him, the Viltrumite, is now activated, and it's directly fighting against the humanized Nolan, who has just been living out his life over the past 20 years and had kind of now expected Mark to never get his powers. He had almost like fantasized that he might not have to go through with his plans while Debbie is alive. Because we know that Mark would be alive either way, whether he got powers or not, but he's like, oh, great, I can live out this fantasy until I complete my mission. But because Mark now reveals that he's gotten his powers, the timelines just moved up. He now has to take this into consideration and move forward with his plans. And it all comes crashing down in a moment, in a flash. Because as soon as he opens that door, Debbie does not hold back. She is coming at him strong. She's been drinking. She screams at him. She throws the whole wine bottle at him. She's the only one who can get away with that. She's the only one who can get away with telling him off and storming off to bed. He doesn't even take out his anger on her. He takes out his anger on the house. He punches the wall. The next day, he flies through the roof because he'd rather hurt something else, the physical building, than hurt her. He does genuinely feel something, some sort of guilt and shame about what he's doing, about the mission. But at the same time, he can't find himself fully able to open up to Debbie, to tell her the truth about his heritage and what he's been meant to do. He just tells her half-truths, and it's catching up.
You need to trust me. If you can do that, we'll be okay.
It's catching up to him, and for the first time, he's confronted by a Debbie who's kicking him out of their house. Not even their house. She says, "Get out of my house," which is way more powerful, by the way. I don't know if you know anything about psychology, but there is a direct correlation to the pronouns people use with their partner and the level of closeness that they share. So for example, if you and your partner refer to things as ours, you know, we are going to do something, this place is ours, versus it's mine, it's yours. There's separation there. And that's exactly what Debbie is doing. She's creating space, she's creating distance, and she is asserting a separation from Nolan in this moment. Now, Nolan's never been confronted like this before by anyone. Nobody's ever stood up to him, but now he finds himself wanting to find the right words for his eventual conversation with Mark. He knows it's his only chance.
Just remember, you're my son, and I love you and your mother more than... What am I doing?
Nolan practices his speech to Mark at the top of the world's highest mountain, the only place he can think of where he's truly alone. And his falter at the end can be interpreted so many ways. He could be talking about how this is pointless. It's his duty and he just has to follow through no matter the means, no matter the cost. But he could also be talking about his own self-doubt, regarding his loyalty to the Viltrumites, regarding what he was going to say. And what was he gonna say? That's what we never really find out here. He loves Mark and Debbie more than what? more than mission, more than duty, more than heritage. If he had admitted that right there and then, it might have kept him from being able to fulfill his task. So he keeps it to himself. He doesn't finish the sentence. And later on, when he's looking for Mark in the house, he has another moment where he just stops and he says,
What did you do?
but before he can take a moment to reflect on that, he gets the perfect punching bag to vent out his frustrations. Realizing Cecil's involvement in espionage in the house allows Nolan to go full rage mode and completely stop thinking about whether or not he should follow through on this mission, and whether or not it's worth losing his family in the process. In many ways, him getting attacked right there and then turns on his fight or flight response, which immediately cements his decision to go through with his actions. He now thinks that Cecil is a menace, ruining what he thinks are his good chances of convincing Mark through some fatherly chat that he's doing the right thing. And it only gets worse when Cecil baits him, tells him about Debbie, how she must be feeling, how he hurt her.
But what about Debbie, huh? Doesn't she deserve an answer?
Don't say her name.
Nolan is so triggered. He can't even hear her name in this moment because the truth is, he loves her so much, but he can't think about that now. He's got to think about the next step. And that leads us to the very damning lines of season 1, when he calls her his pet. Mark immediately goes into denial, calling him a liar, saying it's not true. This is often how we respond when we hear awful things that contradict how we see a person, how we see the world. We immediately go, no, we know this relationship. We've been living within this bubble, and we can almost tell that something is being masked here. The spiteful words, the anger, the hate, it's overpowering something else. And Mark has tapped into that, which is why it doesn't surprise me when later on, when Mark is almost dead, beaten to a pulp by his father, having been smashed through bodies and brick and concrete and mountain, so much bloodshed. So much chaos and hurt and pain and violence. And in that moment where Nolan could make the finishing blow, he stops and he thinks of this.
Look at Mark.
Strike one.
You and I, we made him. He's ours. When he feels joy, we feel joy. See that look on his face? How can you see that and not feel the same way?
Strike two.
As we get older, it's harder to feel that. The weight of the world, it bogs us down. But our children remind us of the joys in life. It brings us back, shows us what life is all about. This is humanity.
There's beauty in simplicity, in imperfection, in limited time. For 20 years, Debbie has shown him how to let go of his stubborn detachment to life, and he's learned to experience the joy of it through his son Mark. The three of them together, they work in perfect harmony. It's actually a beautiful depiction of the value of human connection, whether it be your family, your friends, your partner. Our ability to become close with each other as humans ties us together and allows us to live better lives as a result. I firmly believe the most beautiful thing a human can experience in their lifetime is the opportunity to experience the joys of life through someone else, not just themselves. That is where real beauty is unlocked, where a real love for life is unlocked. Because you're not living for yourself anymore. You're living for your community, for the people around you. If you are nothing more than a collection of everyone you've ever met, a mosaic painted by the experience we've shared with others, then it is so important to foster those connections, to keep them alive and never take them for granted. That is something that keeps us going. Nolan, having lived his life entirely alone, he couldn't fathom having something to live for. He's projecting because he's spent his whole life without human connection. Viltrumites are trained to kill since birth. It's a nightmare situation. You have bloodthirsty helicopter parents on crack, and you spend most of your life off-planet conquering other civilizations on your own in the name of some empire that has never given a crap about you. How were you ever supposed to feel connection to somebody else? But Nolan accomplished this on Earth, and he accomplished it in record time. So when Mark says,
"Look at that, I still have you."
he finally stops. Nolan's mind was ripped between playing the part of the dedicated, honorable, loyal superhero and the focused, pragmatic, conniving conqueror. So he didn't see that the two roles connected in the existence of his son Mark. He didn't have to play a part with his son. He could just be. Appreciating things as they are and living in the moment were foreign concepts to a man for whom time passed in the blink of an eye. But now, with Debbie, he's created a beautiful son who can live on with him. He has felt internal validation in the experience of being a husband and father. So his mission no longer brings that fulfillment or validation to him. In the end, he bails, abandoning his post with tears in his eyes. His heartbreaking realization of just how wrong he's been leads to a moment of deep, dark isolation. I'm sure many of us have found ourselves in a dark place as a direct result of our own flaws, but it doesn't have to mean that we've been buried. It could mean that we've been planted, and there's a chance for us to rewire our brains, to unlearn our past, and construct a new future. Season 2 puts both Nolan and Debbie through the ringer, with both of them having to confront their flaws and what went wrong between them, and it makes them come out all the better for it. In Season 2, Nolan very much struggles to unlearn all the indoctrination he's received his whole life.
They shouldn't matter to me. I'm not supposed to feel this way. How is this better?
He knows he's done something fundamentally wrong, but he thinks that he's messed up in all aspects of his life, not only failing his wife and son, but also failing his people and failing his mission.
I feel shame and regret for my actions. I see the suffering of lesser beings, and it upsets me deeply. What I did on Earth, the pain and destruction I caused was immeasurable. What I did to those people, what I did to my son.
He cannot deal with the shame and guilt of it all, and he very much believes he deserves death. Even after getting some respite by helping the Thraxans for a while, he nevertheless believes that it's not better to feel this way, to feel something for others and feel all the pain. But to quote the best man from Invincible,
Everybody fucks up. To fuck up is human. Shakespeare said that.
Now I get it. The nature of Nolan's mistakes are much, much worse. But it doesn't mean that he's irredeemable. Nolan has now experienced the full scope of human emotion. And the beautiful part of it is, he begins to realize that through the pain, beyond it even, he has this stronger feeling of wanting to reconnect. He misses his wife. He wants to see her again. And when his fellow Viltrumite asks him if his betrayal has been worth the death sentence, he says yes. He not only stands his ground, he is sorry for most Viltrumites, how they don't understand what it's like to have human connection, experiences, emotions, feelings. They don't know what it's like to love, to mess up, be hurt, and learn again. His ability to care saves him in the end because he's able to forge a relationship with Alan that goes beyond just buddy-buddy. He genuinely cares for him and is starting to stand up for what he believes is right. He retakes control over his life, choosing his own path. And in a very mirror-like way, we see the same with Debbie. As she investigated her husband in season 1, we saw her go through the stages of denial, anger, bargaining. She never let herself think beyond the moment of realization. So when all the pieces come crashing down, her first reaction is,
I still can't believe it. I can't believe our time together was a lie. I wish he'd come back.
She really wants to understand the situation because since she doesn't understand, she no longer feels in control of her own life. And that's why she falls into alcoholism. She drinks when she's nervous, and she's nervous when she doesn't feel control. It's a very human thing to try to control everything that's happening around us. When we feel out of it, we start to question what just happened. What has caused this rupture in our reality? And most importantly, why did this person who hurt me hurt me? Was it all a lie? Why did they choose me? Why did they do this to me? And maybe
none of it was real. None of it. You weren't real. I never knew you at all, did I? I never even fucking knew you.
This is truly what it feels like to have experienced any sort of gaslighting or manipulation in your life, whether it be with your parents, children, friends, teachers, partner. You grow so distrustful of your own mind, you start rotting from the inside out. And that's dangerous because your experiences are still valid. If you're starting to think that your experience was a lie, remember that the best lies are wrapped in truth. Your experience of the situation was real, therefore the connection was real. Therefore, you did know that person to an extent. You were close to that person. Just because you're in isolation now, just because you've heard the worst, experienced the worst, doesn't mean that everything before is negated, even if that person says it is. What's more important is what was it like for you? I've had to rewire my own brain around it because I've experienced so much pain due to the manipulation, feeling used, generally feeling that perhaps I never knew the people that I loved the way that I thought I knew them. The moment that I stopped holding myself to that thought and started telling to myself that I know in my heart what the situation was and nobody can take that away from me, so I don't have to give away my experience to somebody else's words, all the doubts stopped having a hold over me. With Debbie, her lack of control threatens to control her. If you even look at her job as a real estate agent, her whole job is essentially to craft the perfect image of the house that a customer wants. She is completely in control of the story, the interior design, the build, the price. With Nolan, she thought she had some control. But now the house has been broken, both literally and figuratively. And yet, didn't she accomplish exactly that? Didn't she build something within Nolan? She took someone who was empty and she filled him up with human experiences. In a lot of ways, Debbie is the architect. She is the one who has crafted such a beautiful family. She thinks she's lost control, but she really hasn't. And it's proven to us when, by the end of season 2, she's taken on the mantle of motherhood yet again. And this child is not only not hers, it's the product of her husband and another baby mama. She is stronger than most of us, okay? She's gotta be in the top 1% S-tier women I've ever met because she is so strong. She decides for herself to stop living in a limbo state, retake control of her life, and live again. Which is why I'm all the more excited to see what's going to happen when Nolan and Debbie inevitably meet again. Ultimately, their path to reconnection is going to involve difficult conversations, a breakdown of their old story, and new promises being made. But I love that about human relationships. Bridges are only burnt when you believe that they are. If we all stopped looking at the ashes of burned bridges as if they were a proof of our sins, and instead looked forward to the day that a newer, stronger bridge is constructed, we could lean into connection more confidently. If you take anything from this video today, I hope it's to be more like Debbie, because this world could really use a little bit more heart and soul like her. If you liked this video and you'd want to see more like it, leave a like and subscribe. And because I'd love to hear from other people who watch Invincible, leave a comment down below. What do you think of Debbie? Do you also see her as the main source of human connection in the show? At the end of season 3, we see that she blames herself for a lot. But I wonder if we're all with Mark when he says that she did everything right.
I see you out there, getting hurt, fighting for your life, and it's my fault. I shouldn't have let your father convince me it would all be okay.
Mom, you did everything right. Everything.